Welcome back. Welcome to another episode of Nain's Shorts, where we talk about random stuff that comes up in training, or at least sometimes. Anyways, this particular time we had class on Sunday, and it was very interesting. It referred to knives and really the defense against them, and keeping in mind that survivability of a knife attack when you're trained is a little bit better, but is it 100%? Is it everything? No. So we keep that in mind and we continue on training and developing our skills. And on that idea, it's then, as we usually talk about, how do we do that more effectively, streamline it so it becomes ingrained faster and students start producing the results that you're looking for more effectively, because ultimately that's what's going to be good, right? We can practice one thing, but if it's not effective or useful in application, why do we practice that thing, or what is the benefit of that thing? And we sort of stumbled across a process that we see in martial arts over time in some schools. In other schools, other instructors have gotten really good at shortening that idea, and even within, say, a seminar or even a class setting, they're able to get from point A to point B. And Rico is one of those people. I know it because I saw it happen on Sunday, and it wasn't just a fluke, let's say. It just didn't happen. A lot of thought went into the idea behind it, and that's where our conversations have been going. What things do we see in martial arts, across all martial arts, that we could say is the same? And the process itself, if you take away the specific moves or the specific ideas or the rank or the title, any of those things, you remove that and you have the general training. You have students that start that may or may not have background in martial arts or movement in general and are clumsy or just don't have that finesse or understanding of their own bodies. It takes them a little longer to get the moves at the beginning, but it's just general movement. And then little by little, as they progress, as they stick with it long enough, they refine the movement, they get into a groove, they start liking it, so they start putting more time and effort into it. And then eventually they get the next piece and the next piece and the next piece until they reach a level where they understand how those pieces fit and how to use them outside of how they were taught. Because I believe many martial artists would agree that a lot of the things that we learn in the way that we learn it isn't necessarily the way we're going to use it outside of the class, outside of the mat. There has to be an augmentation. There has to be something that needs to change so it fits that individual. And a smaller portion of those individuals that get that far become instructors, and then they have their own epiphany and they start either augmenting the way that they teach because they feel that that's more important than what they were taught before, and so on and so forth. Others hold the martial art and the tradition of that particular art so close to their heart that they continue on passing it the way that it was given to them. So again, you see the progress and the different avenues that people take, ultimately being that individual's choice on how to go about or where to go with what they have earned with that knowledge. But it seems to be a very similar process, and usually it takes a lot longer to do so. But what if you apply that idea to a singular concept? Say, being able to, one, understand where that knife is, be able to put your hands on that knife before it actually reaches you, and then stop it from moving altogether. Not only that, being able to do so with multiple opponents. Now, that's the scenario that we ended up with. And a little step further than that, we removed the knives, put patted sticks in the hands of the student and let them sort of use everything that they learned from the beginning of that class in real time without any script and or set structured drill, just free flow. And all that was is taking one idea or one physical concept and then building off of it. And all that was is someone's gonna feed you different strikes, different stabbings, different heights. Nothing set in stone. It's just stab, 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 slash. That's all we were doing. That's all we were feeding to the student. And all they had to do at the beginning is put their hands on it. Stop it. Stop the movement of the knife. That's it. No other instructions, just the idea of getting their hands on that. That's as simple as it was. And then, of course, we didn't wait for the student to get really proficient at it, just good enough where they had a good rhythm going. The reason being is that the second step was once they put hands on it, they had to switch to the other hand and then redirect that arm. Again, we're not touching the knife, so that probably is important to say that we're not going for the knife itself, but the hand that's wielding it. A lesson that we had prior in our class, so I forgot to mention it in this particular instant. So now they're touching and then they're switching to the other hand and they're redirecting. So now it's touch, redirect, stop, redirect, stop, redirect, stop, redirect. And once they got fairly proficient with that, we moved on to the next piece. Now, you would think that we would want to spend more time on each individual piece so they could be more proficient at it. But what we realized is that as you added a second piece, they still had to do the first piece that they learned previous well enough to get the second part, which without realizing it themselves, it forced them to do this better so the second piece could work, because without the first piece, the second one isn't going to happen. So we compounded the repetition because repetition is inevitable. You do need to repeat the movements, but how you go about doing it and in which mental state you do it in seems to have an effect on how quickly then they adapt to that change. And again, we're not the only ones that have done it. We've seen other instructors do so, and it seems to work. Does it work for every instance? I don't know, but it definitely worked in this particular moment where all of a sudden their stop became a lot more efficient. Their bodies started turning so they could get all the structure and all the mechanics that we've worked on prior to all of a sudden come out in this idea, because their concern was less about doing it right and more about not getting stabbed, because essentially that was the instruction. Don't let this person stab you. So they did the first move, the second move, and they were able to go back and forth. We kept the drill going. It wasn't reset and do. It was just moving around as best they could to not get stabbed. The third piece, now immobilize the arm. Now it was touch, grab, redirect, or put somewhere where it's not gonna cut you. So now those ideas started popping up as to what is a better way of making sure to get that out of the way so it doesn't cut or stab you as you're trying to secure that arm. And again, you're trying to secure the arm, not the knife, so they can't come back and try again. Mistakes were made, but again, had to do the first two pieces or a version of the two pieces, because it was no longer touch, redirect, and grab. Sometimes it was just straight touch and grab. So the redirecting part became less about switching hands and more about where you're placing your knife. So all of a sudden, that same idea of redirecting the arm became placing the knife somewhere where it's not going to be harmful to you, and then securing the rest of that to make sure that it's not going to come back and hurt you. That was a progression. Eventually it became don't get stabbed, redirect, attack, and then put yourself in an even better position, whether it's a shoulder grab, an elbow, an arm bar, or however it fell into it. And all of a sudden the student was able to then explore all these ideas essentially doing the same thing, but because we keep adding a different component, a different mentality had to pop up, different ideas. And we even got to a point where we started off the ground, where people were on their knees, on their butt, and the other person started stabbing. So now you have this sense of adrenaline that's pumping. So now you're pressure testing the ideas that you were just practicing on your feet. But just being on the ground, it changes the dynamic so much, because even my heart was pumping and I knew I was safe. We were just exercising. But something happened in my brain where it felt more of an immediate danger, even though all we changed was sitting on the ground. So now we've added an element of pressure testing to the idea. And again, sloppy at first, but as the exercise continued, there was more refinement because there was an actual thought process in the student's mind on what they were trying to achieve while using everything that we've been training thus far in just that class. Eventually we went back on our feet. Huh?
Give credit where it's due. Paul Rubio, Judge King.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, other instructors have been doing this as well, and most recently, Rico saw a video of Paul Rubio and Jesse Enkamp where they actually did this process where he started off with a simple movement and then progressed to the end of it to an entire drill. An entire skill set was then almost developed out of nowhere, keeping in mind that Jesse Enkamp already has a pretty substantial amount of knowledge in the martial arts, the karate nerd, and Paul Rubio being a guy that trains and teaches FMA. Yeah, so both of these guys are very well trained. So the question is, does this work for every level of student? Does the student have to be at a certain achievement level in their art to be able for this to work? I don't know the answer to that, but it's definitely something that is worth exploring. How do we get the information to the student a little more efficiently than we have been in the past? Is it possible with every single lesson, or is it just certain things, certain skill sets that can be developed through this process? Again, I do not have the answers for that, but I definitely hope that more and more people start exploring this idea on being able to streamline their teaching process. Again, for what reason? Well, for the betterment of the student. We want the students to, one, progress and get better than they were, even better than ourselves. But they also want us have to have that want. And how do we do that? Well, if they can succeed little by little with every single class and feel like they accomplished something, would that drive them to keep coming back and keep wanting to learn even more? So there's a lot to be said about the mental process that goes through this and the effect that it has on the mentality of the students themselves. Again, we're not the only ones that do it, but it is very interesting to see more and more people start adopting and using their own interpretation of this process to be able to take something very simple at the beginning of class and by the end of it becomes something that you think is very complicated, but in reality is just adding one piece at a time until the student themselves puts it together and is able to use it effectively, even in a free form flow. So, how do you guys go about doing that? Have you guys noticed this trend or this idea that's been going around? How have you incorporated it into your training and your teaching style? And if you haven't, could you? I don't know, and I hope that you explore it and give us any feedback on your ideas of it. I do appreciate you for your time, and as usual, thank you for joining me on Nain Short. Till the next one. 3, 2, 1, cut!